Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in the month of November. Alright, so like I said, we're going to be talking today about all the books I read in the month of November. In addition, I'm going to also include some books that I finished in the first couple of days of December. So today's December 3rd, and I have finished, I think, 4 books already. Just stuff that I had been reading in November, and I just didn't get it done by the end of November. And so I'm going to include all of that in this because otherwise I'm going to forget about it by the end of December. And so that's just the way we're going to do things today. So let's kind of get into this. I am going to be talking about 13 books today. Like I said, about 4 of them are books that I finished in the first part of December, but the rest I finished in November. But 13 books we're going to talk about today. Of those 13 books, sorry, my notes are all down here. Of those 13 books, 4 of them were 5-star reads, 5 of them were 4-star reads, 3 were 3-star reads, and I had 1 2-star read. Also, of those, 8 of them were audio, 5 of them were physical, 8 of them were owned, 5 of them were borrowed, 2 were middle grade, 4 were YA, and 7 were adult, and 2 were graphic novels. So that's kind of the breakdown of how things landed. So let's kind of get into all these books. At the beginning of November, for 10 days, I hosted kind of an in-between readathon for Historathon. So Historathon is a month-long readathon that I have been hosting over the last couple of years. We decided to move it to November. We already had a full month in February this year, so we decided to just do a short 10-day one in November this year to prepare us for it being a full month in November next year. So in those 10 days, I vlogged what I read, but I also thought I would share with you today what I read. In those 10 days, I read Ruta Sepetys' new graphic novel adaptation of her book Between Shades of Grey. This was adapted by Andrew Duncan, art by Dave Kopka, and color by Bran Livesay? I don't know. Anyway, but this is a shorter, it's deceptively short because the font is fairly small in here. I will say, so backtrack, Amanda, stay focused. My mind is all over the place today, guys. This is a graphic novel adaptation of Between Shades of Grey, which is a historical fiction novel that follows, what's her name? Lena Vilkas, who lives in Lithuania. She is taken as a prisoner during World War II and sent to Siberia by the NKVD. And so yeah, it just follows her story of her life. And so this is the graphic novel adaptation. I will say, when I first started this, I wasn't the biggest fan of the art style, but it definitely grew on me as I continued reading it, and I ended up absolutely loving this adaptation. This is probably my favorite of Ruta Sepetys' books. I've read all of them, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, this one was 5 stars. All that to say, that was 5 stars. Another 5-star book that I read during Historathon was The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. You guys, this book made me sob, like heaving sobs, like I have not sobbed this hard at a book in a very long time. I had to go like hide away in my bedroom at the end of this book because I was crying so much that my husband was like, "You're gonna scare the kids." Oh, this book broke my heart, put it back together, broke it again, put it back together, broke it again, and I absolutely loved every single second of it. I have no idea what that was. I absolutely adored the writing in this. It is a rather thick book. I don't think it should have been any shorter, which is probably an unpopular opinion, but I just loved every single second of this book. This follows, what is her name? The Albright family, Cora. Lenny. Lenny is the girl in this. It follows her in the 1970s. Her dad is a Vietnam vet. He comes back from the war not the same. He's definitely suffering from some PTSD. He decides to take his family, move to Alaska, and live off the land. And it follows Lenny really, and her growing up out in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, and how they survive. It's a story about survival, both in a physical form, in a mental form, in an emotional form. Her dad is abusive, and there's definitely a lot of abuse in this. It was very difficult to read at times, but it was so impactful and so well done. And I loved the way it ended, and I loved everything about this. I read this for the prompt to read a book that you feel like you're the last one to read, and if you have not read this, go read it. And the cover's beautiful also. So, you can't go wrong with that. Loved that book. All right, another one I read for Historathon is The Hidden Child by Louise Fine. This is a book that Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library and I found in the airport when we were coming back from our trip. We took a trip together, and we went into the bookstore at the airport on the way home and found this. And this takes place before World War II. It's between the two world wars, and it follows Eleanor and her husband Edward. Edward is a psychologist, and he is on the front of the eugenics movement in England, and he is a huge proponent of eugenics, and Eleanor is right there beside him, supporting him until their daughter starts having epileptic seizures, and they're really forced with the reality of what eugenics is, and just, do they really believe in what they've been pushing all these years? And it was very eye-opening, very intriguing. I loved there was a lot of science and medical stuff in here, which I personally appreciated. I loved that, and I really liked that. And there was a lot in here too. At one point, Edward travels to the United States, and there's discussion about eugenics in the United States and some of the laws and court cases that were important, and I really loved learning about all that. However, the end of this book was not my favorite, and that's all I'm going to say. It was just, I did not like the ending of this book, and so for that reason, I got 3 stars, but it was a really, really interesting book, so highly suggest picking that one up if that interests you. All right, and then the last book that I read for Historathon is Two Roads by Joseph Bruchac. This is a story that is set in the 1930s during the Great Depression, and it follows Cal Black. Him and his dad lost their farm in the Depression, and they have been living the life of hobos. They've just been living the hobo lifestyle for a few years, and his dad finally decides he's going to go to Washington and help fight for pay from the war. He fought in the First World War. A lot of soldiers didn't get their pay. This is based on reality. This was a true thing. A lot of soldiers didn't get their pay for fighting in the war, and there was kind of a big stand that took place in Washington. His dad goes to take place in that, and he doesn't want to take Cal with him because he thinks it's going to be dangerous, and so he leaves Cal at an Indian training school, unbeknownst to Cal, because Cal did not know he was Indian or Native American. And so, yeah, it just kind of follows Cal's experience. This was my 2-star read of the month, and I will say this was not my favorite. Obviously, it was 2 stars. It was just, I felt like the author was trying to do too much, and didn't do anything effectively by doing that. He had too many moving parts. There were too many things at play, and in a middle grade shorter novel, it just wasn't effective, and so for that reason it got 2 stars, but it was still a really interesting topic, so there's that. All right, then after doing Historathon and pushing through a bunch of historical fiction books, I needed something that was going to lighten the palate, or cleanse the palate, lighten the mood a little bit. And so at that point I picked up Crazy Stupid Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams, and this is the 3rd book, I believe, in the Bromance book club series that she does. These are romance books. I loved the first one. The first one is my favorite by far. The second one was pretty good. This one was just okay for me. It just lacked plot. There was a plot. I don't know. It just didn't didn't work for me as well as the first couple did. But in this one, we follow another one of the members of the Bromance book club and his love interest. She is dealing with the fallout from some things that happened in a previous book and is dealing with some familial issues as well. And he's just kind of trying to support her. And yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. But I ended up giving that one 3 stars. All right. And then after that, I listened to the next installment in the Lunar Along read along. And so I listened to Fairest. This is the novella, I guess. It's not a novella. It's a full-length novel. It is, how many? Like 200 pages. But this is the villain origin story for the Lunar Chronicles. Levana is the name of the villain. This is her origin story. I loved it. People, a lot of times I will hear they don't want to read this because they don't want to sympathize with Levana. They don't want her to become more human. They don't want to be compassionate towards her. This definitely does not make you feel that way. Like, she is not a good person from the get-go. But I love this. I feel like this is a necessary read for the Lunar Chronicles. So if you haven't read this, I highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. All right. And then I also listened to the last book in the Lunar Chronicles, and that is Winter. This is a Snow White retelling. Like I said, it is the final book. It is quite long. This actually is one of the longest audiobooks that I had ever listened to prior to starting BookTube. This is 800 pages long. It doesn't look like it, but it is. And yeah, this is just the final book in the Lunar Chronicles. The Lunar Chronicles are YA fairy tale retellings, but they're sci-fi, and they deal with an illness, a pandemic, a global pandemic. But also there's like a community on the moon that is trying to take over Earth. And so that's kind of the gist of it. I will say that upon a reread of this, and I've heard a lot of discourse across the book community about how YA is not marketed towards teens, it's marketed towards adults that read YA. I definitely felt that with this. I definitely could see parts of this that were geared more toward adult women and not teenagers. There were definitely some unrealistic things that happened, but that all being said, I think that these books are brilliant. I love the storyline. I love the twist on the fairy tales and all of this, and highly, highly recommend it. This one got 5 stars from me. I just think that these books are amazing. So definitely recommend checking those out if you still haven't, because I have been raving about them for months now. All right. Got to look at my list to see where I'm at with things. Okay, so then I listened to a couple more historical fiction because I was just in the mood for it. And the next one I listened to was Dear Mrs. Byrd by A.J. Pierce. This is one that came highly recommended by Gloria Thompson. And so I definitely wanted to get to this one during Historathon. This is set during World War II in London, and it has to do with a woman, Emmeline, who wants to be a journalist. She wants to be like a war correspondent. And so she goes for a job interview at a publication, at a newspaper, and comes to find out that she's actually going to be working for an advice columnist. And not exactly what she had in mind, but she rolls with it, and it's just kind of about her experience there. And she's also part of a fire brigade, like the fire brigade during the Blitz, and so there's a lot to do with that as well. I really, really enjoyed this one. This one got 4 stars for me. It was just a lot of fun. It was very uplifting. It was fairly lighthearted. I mean, all things considered, it's in London during the Blitz, so it can only be so lighthearted, but it was great. Highly recommend it. Thank you, Gloria, for the recommendation, because it was a hit for me. And then I also listened to The Second Life of Muriel West by Amanda Skenendor. This is one that was quite the buzz during Historathon. A lot of people kind of gravitated towards this one. It came up in our live recommendations video that we did. Somebody had mentioned it, and everybody kind of flocked to it. And so I know quite a few people have been reading this one lately. But this one follows Muriel West, who is kind of a Hollywood, not starlet, but she kind of lives the high life in Hollywood in the 1930s, I believe, 20s, 30s, somewhere along in there. Her husband's an actor. She's just kind of living the high life. And then she contracts leprosy, and she is sent to a leper colony in Louisiana. And her life is radically changed. And it just follows her story from that like all happens in the first chapter, and then it just kind of goes from there, and it was really good. Yeah, it was very fascinating learning about this leper colony and how the US kind of attacked this disease when it was breaking out, and the science behind, not the science, I mean, there was some science stuff in it, but not too much. And it was really interesting. I will say I read Molokai, which also has to do with a leper colony in Hawaii, and I kind of preferred that one just because it went more in depth, and it followed her for like her whole life, because she was sent to the leper colony in that book when she was like 8 or 9 years old, and it follows her whole life. Whereas this one, she's an adult, and it just is the span of a few years. So this one got 3 stars for me, but it was a high 3 stars. It was definitely like a 3.5, 3.75, but it was really interesting. So I definitely recommend checking that one out if that's something that you're unfamiliar with. If that's something that interests you, go for it. So those are all the historical fiction books that I'm going to talk about today. I don't think I have anything anymore. But I'm going through my list because I know I don't have a few of them here, and I want to make sure that I include the ones that I don't have sitting in front of me to talk about. So then I read an ebook from my library, and this is one that I was really highly anticipating, and I actually think I might just go ahead and buy this one because it was such a hit. It is a graphic novel, and that is The Secret Garden. What is it called? The Secret Garden on 81st Street by Ivy Noel Weir. And this is a Secret Garden retelling. It's a modern retelling of The Secret Garden in graphic novel form, and it was so well done. I loved this book. Just the twists that they put on different things. It was just, Robin is like a shop cat, like a bodega cat, it's set in New York. It's just, it was so cute. So if you are familiar with The Secret Garden, I highly suggest checking this one out. There were some fun little spins on things, and it was a blast. So yeah, I enjoyed this. The art style was on point for me. It was just, I really enjoyed it. And so highly recommend it if you are up for a modern retelling of The Secret Garden. All right. And then I listened to, I thought this was middle grade. It is not. It's actually shelved teen in my library. His first book, rewind, Amanda. The chaos needs to. This is Punching Bag by Rex Ogle. This is the follow-up to Free Lunch, which I read last year. Free Lunch is middle grade. Free Lunch is about Rex's, these are both nonfiction memoirs. Free Lunch is about his time just living in poverty and being part of the free lunch program at school, the stigma that goes with that, and just living in poverty. This is the follow-up. This has to do with abuse and living in an abusive household where he was abused as a child. And this book broke me. There's an author's note at the beginning that is it basically just says, this is a true story. This happened to me, but if you're not in a place that you can read this right now, walk away from it. Like, do not read this if you are not in a good mental space, because it will destroy you. The afterword of this, or epilogue, or whatever it's called, the afterword, also had me like crying because it just hit really, really close to home. Not in the fact that I had experienced anything like what he experienced. I have not. But it just, as a parent, it made me sick, and it made me just want to hug him. So I'm going to get teary-eyed. like I'm getting choked up thinking about this book. But this is a very, very impactful book. Definitely not middle grade. Definitely at least YA, if not adult, but very impactful, very important. If you can read things like this, highly suggest picking this one up. And thank you, Rex, for your story. Not that he will ever see this, but I appreciate him putting himself out there and telling his story so that others can find hope, because that's why he did it. Okay, checking my list again, because we don't want to forget anything here. I think we're down to the last two. Okay, yes, we are. All right, and then next one I finished really recently is Sister to Sister by Olivia Hayfield. This took me forever to finish. I have been currently reading this one for months. And not because it was a bad book. I actually really loved it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is the sequel to Wife After Wife, which I read in like July, I think. Wife After Wife is a modern take on Henry VIII and his 6 wives. This is about Elizabeth and Mary, his daughters, and kind of their relationship, their power struggle, their just lives. Mostly it follows Eliza, who is Elizabeth, and just her relationship with men. She is famously known to be the Virgin Queen, the White Queen. And yeah, so it just kind of is the take on that. It was really good. I really liked it. I really love Olivia Hayfield's writing. It was very intriguing and just kept me going. I love it. And one of the things that I love about these books is at the beginning, it tells you the different characters in the book and who their tutor equal is. So Terry Robbins Moore is Sir Thomas More, and Lee Walters is Sir Walter Raleigh. That makes more sense. Sir Walter Raleigh. And it tells you a little bit about them. And so that's really fun too. So you can make the correlations between, throughout the whole book and reference it if needed, which is nice too. But yeah, I really, really love this one. It just took me a long time to get through. So that got 4 stars for me. And then the last one that I want to talk about, I actually am halfway through it, but my library loan's gonna expire before the end of the month. And so I just want to talk about it because half of the reason why I love this book is the illustrations. And that is The Lost Spells by Robert McFarlane and Jackie Morris. I picked this up after seeing Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day, seeing her talk about it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to get my hands on this. This is a book of poetry, but one of the things that I love about this book is the illustrations. So I want to find one of my favorite ones. Where is it? Come on. This is just chock full of gorgeous illustrations. All the poetry has to do with nature. Lots of birds. Lots and lots of birds. But there is a poem about an oak tree that I loved. It's beautiful. And so, yeah, this is just, I absolutely love the art in this. Just pushes it over the edge. I think I'll probably end up giving this one 4 stars. I'm not sure, but I definitely wanted to show you this before I have to take it back to the library. I will finish it today or tomorrow, but I wanted to talk about it while I could show you all the beautiful pictures. Look at those flowers. So pretty. Definitely go check this one out if you haven't. It's brilliant. So, those are all the books that I had to talk about today. Have you read any of these? Let me know what you think about them down below. Are you now interested to read any of them? Let me know that as well. And that's going to do it for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.